Chafalef. Now, boy, we're in the middle of discussing Achdus. Achdus Havaya. Achdus Hashem doesn't only mean that the Eibishter is one. That the Eibishter is one is a Munah. Achdus Hashem means that the world is one with the Eibishter. He brings the pasuk Anechi, but really the mitzvah of Achdus is from Shema Yisrael Havaya Elokeinu Havaya Echad. And he says in Perek Chof, what's the pshat Achdus Havaya? What does it mean that the world is one with the Eibishter? That it's klochshiv. It's like nothing. The whole creation is like a word. Since the whole creation is like a word, there really is not a world. It's menish avot. And he explains in unusual arichas this idea that dibur is chutz liyetzim, first of all, and that it's not of any chashivas compared to keach dibur, compared to keach machshava, and so forth and so on. He touches on the fact that in etzim there's b'chal no atheist and so on. But you have to understand one thing. Bottom line is, when you finish Perek Chof, you come away with the following: there's a world, has no chashivas whatsoever, but there's a world. So when you say Achdus, Achdus means there's nothing besides for the Eibishter. Achdus means there's nothing valuable besides for the Eibishter. There's nothing significant besides for the Eibishter. But the world is a word. A word is something. So the Alter Rebbe begins Perek Chof Aleph and introduces us to the idea of Tzimtzum Shaloi Kipshutei. That in the language of today's Tanya, it's going to be Dibur Shaloi Kipshutei. The idea that Hashem spoke in creating the world is not speech. V'hinei. Perek Chof Aleph. V'hinei. The measure of the Eibishter is different than the measure of people. In the previous Perek, we described creation as speech. And we explained that what does it mean, klach shiv? Because the whole creation is only a word. Says the Rebbe, you have to remember something else. That when the Eibishter speaks, it's different than our speech. Now, why do we call creation speech? I told this to you already 2 shiurim ago, I think. Why do we call creation speech? 3 reasons. Reason number 1, when a person speaks, the words are separate from themselves. Chutz liyetzim. Reason number 2, you can only say one word at a time, his chalkos. And reason number 3, the amount of air, which is a mashal for chayis and eir and keach, of a lakus, which you could invest in a spoken word, has to be limited. You can't blow and speak, right? So speech is separate from the Eibishter, it's disparate in itself, with a measured amount of life. Says the Rebbe, when the Eibishter separated the world from himself, where did it go? The Eibishter separated the world from himself, where did it go? In other words, where is Hashem not? And he explains, when a person speaks words, and they have Allah dibur should appear the air of the words from his mouth. Who mortgage can be felt, venira, and seen. As a dove, a thing unto itself, moved mishasha, separate from the person. Shehein, what is the person? As a bechen is the nefesh atzma, the 10 faculties of the neshama, which are inside the guf. And the words are traveling outside the guf into the emptiness of creation. When you talk about the Eibishter, even though we're describing creation as speech, which is separate from him, and his chalkos into itself, with a chayes mitzumtzum, there's a problem. Because ein dibure moved l'menu yizbarach chas v'shalom. God forbid to actually say and insinuate that the words that the Eibishter speaks in creating the world are separate from him. Why? There's nothing separate outside of him. There's no place where he is not. So you have to understand, we got a problem. By a person we understand what speech means. I'm here, my words are there. But when the Eibishter speaks, he's here and he's there too. Right? Now, if you go with the sheet of Tzimtzum Kipshutei, which Alter Rebbe is going to discuss in Shadi Yichad with Perek Zayin, Tzimtzum Kipshutei means Hashem is taking out where the world is. Hashem removes himself. And Hashem removes his light, whatever, there's 4 shitas about it, but that's the extreme shita. In the Mokum Achol, the so-called space of creation, the Eibishter is not. What about Achdus? So they will hold Achdus is only Ashgacha, that the Eibishter oversees every detail happening in the creation from an arm's distance, through the Kav, through the Tzimtzum. But Atzmos, Ein Sof, Moed, and Eir are not here. But we hold Tzimtzum Shalei Kipshutei. We hold that Hashem is here and Hashem's light is here. No, if Hashem is still here and Hashem's light is here, when Hashem spoke and puts the word outside of himself, wherever the words are, he still is. So the speech never happened in the first place.
Why would we think about it that way?
Because of physical speech, we assume that by the Eibishter it's separated from him. And there are those who take a hold that's him dibur kipshutei. How? Siluk. Hashem removes himself. And we say that the dibur... Okay, v'lachein, and therefore, his speech is different than ours. His thought is different than ours. As the pasuk says, his thought is different than ours. When it comes to thought, the difference in his thought and our thought is very obvious. What's the difference? When you think, what happens? Nothing happens. When the Eibishter thinks, what happens? The Eibishter thinks the world comes to existence. But speech, we're more similar to the Eibishter. Why? When Hashem speaks, the world comes into being. When a person speaks, if he happens to be a king, and Bidvar Melech Shiltain, a king speaks, it happens. Says the Rebbe, still, Uksiv can go with Rochaim and Derechechem v'geim. That the Eibishter's drachim, and I'm supposing that this means dibur, is also different than our own. How? When a king speaks, as soon as he speaks, it happens. When the Eibishter speaks, as soon as he speaks, it happens. So human beings have this in common with the Eibishter. In other words, not like by machshava, where there's no similarity whatsoever between a person's machshava, because his machshava achieves nothing. And the Eibishter's machshava actually creates. Dibur by a person could create. You know what the difference is? When you speak, you've taka created. When the Eibishter speaks, he hasn't created. When you speak, there's now something separate from you. When the Eibishter speaks, it looks like there's something separate from him, but it was never separated. You understand? So just like his machshava is different than ours, his machshava creates and ours doesn't, his dibur is different than ours. Our dibur makes something separate from us. His dibur does not make something separate from us. It's like the Alter Rebbe over there. You shouldn't really call his speech, because it's not separate from him. It's only by way of analogy. And here goes the insight. The way I teach this to my boys in Tanya every year. Yeah? What do I tell my boys? If you want to understand the Eibishter's mashal for creation, you have to use two mishalim. A person who has spoken. B, a person who has not yet spoken. Combine those two mishalim, you understand creation. The Eibishter, after he speaks, like a person before he speaks, because the worlds are not separated from himself. When a person down here speaks, who magala l'shem, and he reveals to people who are listening, this is hidden and concealed away and hidden in his thought. They misdrew in the nimshal l'mayla kvayach. That the exiting of the light and life from the Eibishter, so to speak. May I from a hidden state, Allah gila to a revealed state. Livrei elim is to create worlds, lachiyesim to give them light. Nikra b'shem dibur is described as speech because it seems like it's become separated from him. This is the 10 utterances. With which the Eibishter created the world. The Shem created the world with 10 utterances, and these words are revealed. They were hidden for us, and now they're revealed. It's like a person before he speaks, the words are hidden, and now they're revealed. Continues the Rebbe, and he says, moreover, the rest of the Tanakh, besides for the first parsha of Bereshis, which speaks about creation, the Nevi'im reached to their prophet vision. Is also speech about the Eibishter. Now you have to remember, Ma'aseh Bereshis is lower than the Torah. Asada Ma'amoris, the first Parsha Chumash, is called Chochmat Atah. The rest of the Torah is called Chochmei Lah. Says the Rebbe, just like creation, it's called Hashem's speech because it's revealed. The Torah, which is even higher, more removed from the world, when the Eibishter gives us the Torah, it's called speech. The Eibishter is revealing into this world, not just Chochmat Atah, Chochmah of Ma'aseh Bereshis, but Chochmei Lah, the Chochmah of Torah. This is the end of the Moshe. We describe creation as speech, because just like when a person speaks, he's revealing to others. When the Eibishter speaks, he's revealing to us. What is the difference? Your speech is separate from you, his speech is one with him. Yes, but the worlds are not separated from him.
No, but it's not that it's using as much as the true thing that he spoke.
Yeah, but spoke has a taich. And the fundamental taich of speech is that you make something outside of yourself. And by the Eibishter, there's leis asad put him in it. There's nothing outside of him. So it just looks like it's outside of him. Since we don't experience Ein Sof, we feel like we're separate from him. In fact, we are swimming in a yam of Ein Sof. We are right now. We're in Ein Sof. We're in the Eibishter. We just don't feel it. So it's like a one-way mirror. To us, Hashem spoke. To himself, he never said anything. The speech and thought of the Eibishter, so to speak, are totally one with him. In an absolute way of unity, a way of analogy, like a person's speech and a person's thought, while they still are, in a possible state, in chokhmah, in his wisdom and his understanding. Again, over here you have to try seichel, also bina, even though normally seichel means chokhmah. With the thirst and desire in one's heart, than before. It rose up from the heart into the brain to think and then to speak in words and letters. People think in letters, people speak in letters, but people don't have the mind and the heart, the emotions and the intellect of a person higher than atheist, like we taught yesterday. That then, before you think in practical terms and before you actually speak, the letters of thought and speech, which are going to come. That's right, the same idea again. Before the Eibishter speaks and thinks, there's no Asius. The Eibishter, after he has spoken and thunk, is still like that. Which come from this desire, this thirst, which is existent possibility, believe in the heart, and kvayachal, even after the Eibishter thought them and the Eibishter spoke them, it's still it's completely one with the Eibishter. Which is the Chochma and Bina in the mind, the desire and thirst in the heart. Stop. What does the Alter Rebbe say? This is the classic idea of Tzimtzum Shalek Pshutei, but on the signal of Perek Chafalav, using the mashal of Dibur and Machshava, atheist. And the Alter Rebbe is meramis to it later on in Tanya Perek Lamed Gimel, which is of the ill Perek Chafalav, that the Eibishter speaks. He makes it look like something has been separated from him. It's never become separated. That's all. So the Eibush, you want to understand that Hashem creates the world, combine two mashals, a person who has thought and spoke, and a person who has not yet thought nor yet spoken. When you combine those two mashalim, you understand that the world to us has been spoken, to the Eibush was never created.